You know when someone has baby duty, you know that means podcast.
Everyone been doing their vocal warm-ups.
The best vocal warm-up of the day.
About as loud as I get.
How long can I leave it before Mitch has to say we're live? And we're live. I don't think it should go away. It's a shtick now. You should grasp your shtick. I'll now stop talking rubbish. We are Pixel Pints. Hello, everybody. We are the only global podcast that talks about two things that we enjoy, which is good beer and video games. We're not here to promote drinking. Please drink responsibly, especially at 5:30 in the morning for Mitch in LA. Any beers or breweries we might talk about aren't sponsoring us. And yeah, it's a Saturday. The sun is shining.
Yep.
Open my blind and blind myself, so I'll close my blind again. Has anyone looked up what the weather is like in Las Vegas?
I haven't. I thought America's weather's all the same. I thought Mitch could just tell us what it's like in California.
Well, so in LA, it's hot and sunny.
Let me go to my let me go to my green screen where here we have the Great Lakes. And just, no, I have no idea.
Yeah, it was that Bill Hicks joke. I live in LA now, but I like coming to the UK because you guys have weather. In LA, it's hot and sunny. Today, hot and sunny. Tomorrow, hot and sunny. Next week, hot and sunny.
Well, guess what? This week has been actually cloudy and cold.
Yeah, but
What's cold?
yeah,
Cold is
not
like
for you.
50,
Did you have?
Oh no, not cold for me. God no. I'm still in shorts these days when everybody's in like their sweatshirts and pants, and I'm like, I mean, I could wear that and still be comfy, but I'm wearing shorts.
Right. So if you want to watch us live, you can do so right here on twitch.tv/pixelpints. You can watch the archive of the episode on YouTube, where please like, subscribe, leave a comment, ring the bell, all of the YouTube things that YouTube does for YouTubers.
Leave a comment.
I said comments. Come on.
And we will reply back to you.
Oh, yeah, we will, because we've got nothing better to do. And you can follow us on social media at Pixel_Pints on Twitter and Pixel Pints Pod on Instagram, where mainly we post pictures of beer, which is the pints of the thing. And if you want to follow any of the members of the show, we've got all of our social media stuff plastered all over the place. If you are interested in finding out about how to drink more pickling liquid, please follow at Mitch Secor or at The Stand User, who, strangely enough, are both from Wisconsin and both drink pickle water.
Yeah, I got to work on game graphics for our Twitter handles on our little boxes. It's the next thing on my list. Also putting our social media on this page too. But if you want to listen to us too, we're on every single platform that you can listen to your podcast. Just look for Pixel Pints.
I was going to get that in. I just thought I'd had to take the piss about you and Evan drinking pickled liquid out of the jar.
That's when the thing.
That's the thing when weirdos.
That's the thing when you drink pickle liquid. You're on top of everything.
Either that, or you're so desperate for
the attention.
No,
I do a podcast with you guys. I don't want attention.
Right, and we are joined this week by none other than the host of the #1 Essex-based gaming podcast, Idle Game Chat, who you can follow at Idle Game Chat. It's Joey, aka OTTAPPS.
Hello. Good to be back. It's been a little while. I missed the last two, which I was bang up for in terms of subject matter, but timings didn't work out, so I thought I'd jump on this one and lend my thoughts.
We are going to talk about this week after Mitch announcing that Phil Spencer should get fired again. Mitch has got some kind of vendetta against Phil Spencer, head of Xbox, about trying to get him fired for at least the last 3-4 years.
God, yeah.
So this turned into a debate about why should Phil Spencer be fired or not, to let's make this a bit tastier, eh? Let's get another contender in the mix. So it's going to be Phil Spencer versus Jim Ryan. Who do you fire? Would you swap their roles at all? We'll get onto all of this. But first things first, I want you to declare who you are backing. So, Mitch, we know who you're backing.
Oh yeah, I'm backing Phil Spencer while Nintendo just sits there and goes, "Good."
They'll pick up the spoils of war after this. Absolute
They pick up all the swords and stuff after that, and they'd be like, "We'll just add this to our armory."
Yeah, and they'll break because they can't do bloody weapon degradation properly and repair like in Zelda.
What do you mean the greatest game ever made ever by people who only make the greatest games ever made ever that aren't called Naughty Dog?
That's true. It's very true. I'm on Phil's side here. I can't condone the man being sacked, as we'd call it over this way.
But before we get into defending your positions, shall we talk beers?
Yes.
Since we split our time between talking beers and talking games, let's talk beers.
Did you almost forget about the beers?
I almost did.
I kind of thought you did. The way you were going.
I was getting into full flow as well, and I thought, rein it in. So, Joey, do you want to go first?
Yeah, nothing out of the ordinary here, nothing spectacular, but I do like a proper job, so that's what we're on here. The only thing that irritates me about this beer, because I love the taste of it, it's one of my favourites, and actually I like their Big Job, which is about 8%, so be careful if you're going to get that one. The one thing I do hate about, particularly in this bottle presentation, is that the sediment in the bottom you've got to be careful of. That can end up in your glass, so you can't pour the whole lot in. But other than that, it's a fantastic beer and been one of my favourites for the past sort of 2-3 years since I discovered it.
It is good, and it's from Cornwall.
Yeah,
St. Austell Brewery.
That's it. My sister lives down there, so it's nice to visit and get some of that. They have a lot of proper job, and St. Austell beer, like Tribute, I'm a big fan of as well.
Yeah, Tribute's nice.
It's a great brewery, and this is a great beer.
I have Morian Czech Dry Stout.
Look at that little fella on the front.
I couldn't believe it when I got this in my latest batch of random beers from Beer 52, established in 1278.
Wow.
Surely a liar.
Yeah,
surely.
I'm guessing they've made that shit up. So 6.5 ABV. They weren't lying when it says they say it pours cloudy.
Oh.
It's opaque, completely black.
Yeah, you can't see a thing.
It's not cloudy at all.
That pours the night.
Yeah, it's got the look.
That could darken the room.
It's got the look of tar.
Does it taste like tar? That's my big question now.
It is crazily malty, lots of toffee, slight burnt licorice type flavour. Can't say I'm enjoying it too much on that basis. I forgot to change my Beer 52 subscription just to the light beers from the darks, because the last box I got, I enjoyed all of the dark beers because they were all Belgian beers, so they were all Bruins. There was one stout in there and it just tasted like a decent stout. It wasn't some Burkhoff juice mad scientist concoction of coffee macaroon stout. It's kind of turned into, that's my one per list from What Culture, me taking the piss out of Matt for his Burkhoff juice choices. Mitch, do you have any interesting beverages?
Unfortunately, I woke
What
up late
flavour
today.
Red Bull do you have in your fridge?
Well, I have a Red Bull right here. It's just the sugar-free Red Bull because it tastes better and it has half the calories and no sugar. So,
But it's still got all of the energy drink type stuff. So
yeah,
the sugar content isn't going to make much difference if you're drinking.
it's all. Yeah, it's gonna give you it's gonna give you a boost of something.
Well done to Dietrich Matterschmidt. He invented it, didn't he?
I have no idea.
Or is he just the head of Red Bull Racing?
I don't know, to be truthfully
Someone
honest.
look it up and leave us a comment. So, OTTAPPS, since you're here doing cross promotion, would you like to cross promote?
Yeah, so I do a weekly podcast. It drops every Monday. We started to stream live on Twitch. Mitch actually lent a hand about 4 weeks ago to show me some of the tricks in OBS, so we could do that. So thank you to Mitch for that. But you can catch the archive every Monday. We mainly talk about the games we've been playing, but sometimes do a bit of news and industry stuff, depending on what's hot. And then there's a YouTube channel that has the archive and some old videos where we actually put effort into editing it. So digital, you can find all that. So if not, Idle Game Chat, search for it in your favorite podcast app and it will be there. And if it's not, let me know and I'll make sure it's on there.
And you did your Game of the Year 2020 recently.
We did, yes.
I know it seems a bit late.
Well, it's funny you should say that, but what did we get in a couple of days ago? It was the DICE Game of the Year. So my philosophy on Game of the Year is I want to give people a chance to play all the games before we start doing the voting and whatnot and chatting about it. So we try and aim and put it on either with GDC or the DICE Awards, whatever comes first in the year, and marry it up with that. And it just gives us a bit of time to reflect as well. I mean, there's been a couple of times when in December I thought, Game of the Year is probably going to be X for me. And then as time's gone on, I've forgotten more and more about the game and thought about another game. So,
you found Hades, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's something I picked up very late in the year, and probably would have been struggling had we done it in December or even early January. So, I've got a list normally of games that I like to get through, and so have the guys. So it just gives everyone a little bit of extra time. There's no rush, and you chuck it out springtime. People are normally a bit shocked and might go back and listen to it. So.
Let's be honest. You only did it that late because you just needed that much time to get through all the bugs in Cyberpunk, right?
I still haven't got Cyberpunk. Fortunately, I've not subjected myself to that. When they've done that bloody next gen patch, I will jump in then. But
you'll be waiting. 2022, my friend. 2022.
I know. I can wait. I've waited this long, and it's it's not gonna change my mind. So yeah, we did our Game of the Year. It is late, but try and do things a little bit differently, and later on works for us.
Great. And if you haven't listened to that, it was interesting to hear the debate in which The Last of Us Part 2 won everything.
Yes, it did.
So spoiler.
We only did Game of the Year, to be fair, but normally we would do some other, like, not quirky awards, but stuff like best game not released that year, which basically opens the door for older games. But we were so badly prepared this year that we didn't do it. So we will try and bring back a few other little awards, like biggest surprise, all that shit, like biggest disappointment, Cyberpunk, and we'll try that next time. But Last of Us 2, yes, was our Game of the Year as a collective.
Great. Right. Now, are we ready to talk Big Phil versus Jack Ryan?
Actually, I think if you're going by height, it's Little Phil and Tall Jim Jack.
I think he's talking in personality.
No.
Measuring it by that.
It could be.
I hope he's not talking about something else.
Or if you want to talk about annoyance of one won't shut up, the other one just is
Well, it could be both of them. Right. I've arbitrarily decided on a format for this, which I expect both of you to stick to, which is debate style. So you will each take it in turns to put an argument for your chosen
Candidate.
Candidate. I don't know, head of platform, whatever they call themselves.
Rich man.
Defend the white rich man.
And if Nintendo were here, it would be defend the Japanese guy sat in the corner laughing at everyone else whilst they're swimming in their own ocean.
Would it be Doug Bowser if we were doing Nintendo? Would he be the guy we would choose?
Well, he's not technically the head of Nintendo, is he? He's the head of Nintendo of America. So it would be the God, I can't remember the guy's name who took over from Iwata.
Well, don't pronounce it wrong because Evan will get on your case.
Well, that's fine.
Well,
as long as he says the prefecture of wherever the place is, I don't mind so much.
I was gonna say, McWomble, every time I imagine Nintendo, I can never get that E3 out of my brain when they were puppets. I could just imagine them looking and with the way they were walking, like it's and just having that puppet face for them to just in the background going, good.
The Puppet Master. That was a terrible, cheesy set of horror movies.
Iwata from the grave controlling the puppets in Nintendo.
Yeah, and in other news, if anyone's not watching Invincible, go watch Invincible. It's fucking great.
I will say, just because you said that, I agree. I'm just going to tell people, the first episode is very generic. You need to finish the episode all the way before you put judgment on the show.
Is there post-credits to look out for, or is it all...
Well, what the show does is every time they're going to pronounce the hero's name, they post the title.
Right.
But in the end of the first episode, he doesn't decide his hero name until the very end. But then it makes it look like you're going to go to credits, but it actually still playing the episode after that. Right. So it's just very confusing if you don't continue to watch. Because there is a clear point where it does go to credits. So
yeah, and then there are you need to continue watching the credits as well, because they do, after introducing Robert Kirkman as the lead writer, and then a couple of other the lead director, and then you have about another 5-second snip of show, and then it goes into the credits proper.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like Marvel where they may or may not have a post-credit sequence, and it may or may not be 1 minute after, or 8 minutes, or 20 minutes after. But yeah, Invincible is now my favorite superhero show.
Oh,
it's that damn good.
They had a cliffhanger this last week. I was so upset. I'm like, I really just want to know.
So speaking of going from things that are that damn good to potentially hugely mundane and disappointing, you will each have your opportunity to set out your argument for your chosen candidate. I have a pre-prepared statement from Erebus Jones to read, which I will do after that, and then you'll have an opportunity to rebut.
Ooh.
And at the end of this, I will arbitrarily decide who should be fired, swapped, hired, be told, given a pat on the back and told on your trot, keep going with what you're doing. Here's the keys to the new Mercedes.
I just don't want Phil to get sacked. That's all. So if that's the outcome, I'm happy. If Jim gets the car, he can have the car. But Phil Spencer, I can't have him sitting there with his P45 next week. I can't accept that.
Right. So on that note, Mitch, set out your case for retaining Jim Ryan in employment.
This is like the easiest argument in the world.
We'll wait and find out when OTTAPPS has a chance to rebut what you come out with right now.
I'm going to say this is all facts. I'm good. Like McWomble, I did debate in high school, and I was good at it. So here we go. So all this is going to be based off facts. I'm not going to base this any on the speculation of Jason Schreier's article, because we don't know if it's true or not, because Sony has not stated any. Well, we know Days Gone 2 got canceled. That's all we know for certain, because
it didn't get canceled, it just didn't get greenlit.
Correct. Because the directors admitted that's what happened. But besides that, The Last of Us 2 remake and all that kind of stuff, I'm not going to go into because it's not confirmed as fact. So,
and it's not that terrible. Spoiler.
I agree. Huh. Okay, you're helping me.
This is
Thank
the
you.
thing. Just to say, I've got no problem. I love PlayStation and Jim and all that, but I just can't have Phil being sacked. That's all. That's all I'm in this for. I've got blue blood running through my veins. I've got a bit of green as well.
It's just, what color does that make?
I don't know. McWomble, you're clever. You went to school.
Jim Ryan deserves to stay at PlayStation because, one, he's only been on the job for a few years. So he has done some impactful things, but he has not really done many things to make critical change or the direction of PlayStation into the future. But the things he has done, he has taken media barrage against PlayStation and has somehow always turned it into a positive because they do a great job of presenting their product in regards to like their games. And an example, everyone was complaining that the PlayStation was going to be severely underpowered because it didn't have as big of specs as the Xbox Series X. Like, that was the big conversation for months. And guess what? Everyone shut their mouths when the PlayStation Showcase showed up and they showed all those games that you get to play in your PlayStation. Everyone forgot about how underpowered this console was. Underpowered. So
that was Sky Commerce for everyone listening.
Yes, Skycom is underpowered because, as we know, the PlayStation does a lot of things on the back end side that allows itself to produce the same type of power that the Xbox would. It's not through raw horsepower, it's through little cables and avenues. So
it's just a shame it's got this tiny, pathetic, tiny hard drive.
Yeah, I'll admit that. So he's able to take media blows and then be able to counter them back with great product that people want to play, and people shut their mouths immediately and tweet more about that than they ever did about the blow up of things. So he's done that. He has taken directions of PlayStation in regards to games and has continued their success throughout this time. I mean, he has allowed publishers to take their time on games, just like his predecessors did. And that flourished his success due to the fact of, like, an example would be The Last of Us Part 2. That was supposed to come out at the end of 2019. He allowed it to be pushed into 2020. And guess what? It became Game of the Year. It also became one of the most critically acclaimed games. One of the most
Digital's Game of the Year. So how's that for Game of the Year? I'm helping him again. I'm doing the... Come on. Maybe I'm a double agent to really throw Phil Spencer under the bus. Did you ever think of that?
Well, more of a win for me, so whatever. So he's been able to take the product and be able to continue its success. He also has allowed them to explore new avenues for PlayStation in general. So an inclusion would be allowing Spider-Man Miles Morales to be greenlit, because actually that project got greenlit when Jim Ryan took over at PlayStation, which is do a smaller game, because it is smaller, but still have the high production values, and it ended up outselling The Last of Us Part 2. So it shows that you can still have major success with products. And I know Spider-Man is a huge name brand, and that's probably the reason why it sold a lot, but it's a smart idea to do so that you can still get more games out to your fans, and they're good quality products to be able to sell. He's been able to have the number one selling console by almost a 2-to-1 margin going into the next generation, even with how much they have been quiet about all their information compared to Microsoft constantly chatting about their stuff in Game Pass. And he's shown that you don't have to adjust if you're doing fine. You don't have to adjust the person that's trying to catch up. And they're going to be doing a good job of leading in the direction. Like, they haven't faltered. And Yeah, I mean, and then my final thing was they're exploring other avenues. Doesn't mean, and some of them can be good, some of them can be bad, but what doesn't change is that the games that you play on your console are always good. So everyone's blowing up about this Movie Pass thing, and it's like they're not charging people extra for their PlayStation Plus account to get these movies. I don't care if it's like, oh, I don't want another streaming platform. Sony as a movie studio does not have any kind of streaming service to be able to push out their content compared to like Paramount has Paramount Plus now, which is Viacom. And, you know, Disney has Disney Plus, HBO, Warner Brothers has HBO Max. And so all these big movie studios have their own streaming apps. So just to give PlayStation fans free movies that are actually good movies, like good comedies, and
that's debatable.
I think Sausage Party is probably the most underrated film ever. But Wolf on Wall Street is not a good movie. What are you talking about? You don't like?
I've not watched it.
Oh,
it's too long, and I've seen it twice. I loved it the first time, and the second time I soured on it a bit because it's just lots of shouting.
Yeah, it's a lot of shouting.
It is.
It's a lot of F-bombs. I think it has the most F-bombs in any film of all time. I think that's what they said. But anyway, for them to try,
I'd like to rebut the good movies comment with one word: Venom.
I like Venom. Don't you diss my Venom?
I've got no horse in that.
For anyone listening, I'm despondently shaking my head.
So
need some sound effects for all this stuff.
You're asking too much work for me at this early in the morning.
Mitch has already done more work on this show than Matt did in 2.5 years. So,
well, I will give some credit to Rafa. He's been doing great. These new graphics in the background, the new background for our show is all Rafa. He's been great. He's helped out make the template for our thumbnails, so he's been great. Appreciate Rafa is all he's done.
You can buy NFTs off him as well if you follow Raphael Michael on Twitter or Instagram. You'll see his stuff, and you can buy his digital artwork.
Yes, very much so. He does great stuff. So I'm just so in the end, basically, he has not led them off a cliff. He has only let them excel and sail into the top direction, in the direction that they're going, which is up, or. Like, I have not seen them stagnate, and it would be concerning if he comes in and then they become stagnant. That would be a concern. That's not happening.
Okay. Mitch, thank you for your opening remarks. OTTAPPS. Protect your fill. And that's not a euphemism.
Coddle your fill.
That means something different in Essex. I'm not going to. What Mitch has said about Jim is entirely correct. He hasn't done a lot wrong, but my view on Mr. Ryan. I mean, he's a lovely Englishman. First of all, let's get that out there.
Yeah, you can't count. You can't counter. You got to protect your man first.
I've got to protect him first.
You got to protect Phil first.
All right.
You counter me after.
Right. I'll count you up. Well, I'm not even really a counter, really. But look, Mitch, were you old enough to remember the launch of the Xbox One? I don't mean that horribly, but were you engaged with the gaming industry, the world?
Are you talking about the
media?
the TV, sports,
always
TV.
Online, DRM, you can't share your game. Yeah, that console.
Yeah, I do remember that. That was enjoyable.
It was not enjoyable for someone who had an Xbox 360, and that was what they were trying
I had
to sell
one
me.
too, but I was like, wow, what a dumpster fire.
So, one thing you've got to context, the whole of Phil Spencer's reign was that he took over, 2014? Is that the March 2014? Is that the rough sort of dates if you do your
He took over after E3, so that would have been July.
Yeah, okay.
Of that year. Before the console launch. No, that's not true. He took over.
He took over from Don Matrick after Don Matrick shat the fucking bed.
Yes.
Yeah, which was after E3. He took over in like July of that year because Don Matrick ended up having to go. He went to a new company.
Yeah, he went to
some mobile gaming.
Yeah.
Finger or something.
He upgraded.
Zinger.
Air quotes.
He went to
quotes.
Yes.
Yeah, he went
Agree.
to
So in doing my very lax research, the date I have is around March 2014. So that's after the
Oh,
Xbox One had launched. And that's
okay.
after, as Keith rightly said, Don Matrick came in, shit the bed, wiped his ass with the covers, and then walked off and went off to Mobile Land. And
Oh,
at
that's
that
why the
point,
console was black.
yes. And at that point, we had and they walked a lot of this back before launch. Like they got rid of the DRM requirements, the always online, bits and pieces.
Yeah,
But
after a mic
still,
drop, that you pretty much have to.
yeah, exactly. So that was all walked back before launch. But even in a post Xbox One world, they had completely severed any trust that an Xbox fan should have in their product. November 2013, Xbox One launches. It's had all this cloud about, oh, we've tried to do this and we've walked it back. We're still focusing on TV. We're still focusing on entertainment. We've still got that Connect. You still can watch your American football every Saturday whilst playing, I don't know, God knows what. And there's all this, there's a big negative cloud around Xbox One at this time. The trust, in my opinion, had gone. It certainly had from my perspective as someone who had invested in the 360 over the PS3 at the time. So that was, I flip-flopped and went to PlayStation 4 at the start of the last generation. And they were in a PR nightmare. The landscape of Xbox One is a disaster. It truly is. It not only does it have all that crap associated with it, it's underpowered. Like you were talking earlier, Mitch, about PS5 might be underpowered, and it comes out it's not. They're about level when we cook the games and pump them out. The Xbox One was underpowered and still is to this day. Like it came out, it was more expensive than the PlayStation. It had all this Kinect crap, and it ran games worse. So that is I don't know how much worse a launch you can get when, for the first time in a long, long time, perhaps ever, you are launching a product against Sony side by side. The PS3 came out a year later from the Xbox 360.
Yes.
It's about a year lag.
Can I give you an example of a worse launch?
Go on.
And it was Soldier Boy's console.
You didn't bother
That's
that.
That's the only example of a worse launch of a console system that I can think of.
No, I mean, to be honest, the Wii U wasn't great either, but
It's still
in the
better
fact
than
that
the Xbox One. Jesus.
Agreed. So the Xbox One, it went to war with Sony directly, November 2013, with a severely underpowered machine, all the other crap coming with it, all the PR nightmare. And Phil comes in March 2014, has to unpick a lot of that. And that is not something you can do easily. It's not something you can do quickly, because at that point, the brand is severely damaged. And from that point onwards, as soon as kind of Phil got in charge, yes, he was good in these press conferences. He seems personable. He talks a lot. He talks a big game, and you kind of think, well, at least it feels like he's talking to me, not at me for once. Like, I can appreciate that. But he starts to slowly, over time, during his tenure, make positive steps for the Microsoft brand. One of the first ones, backwards compatibility. That comes a year later, June 2015, the first sort of E3 where he's had a nice year to settle in. And, you could argue, this is pure speculation, but I'm playing some lovely PS4 games on my PS5 thanks to backwards compatibility. Would Sony have had the foresight or bothered to do that had Xbox not installed that on the Xbox One? We don't know. But I feel like that's a positive move from a big brand, a big company. And that kind of sets the table for where he's going to go next. Play Anywhere. That comes the following year. So if you're like me and you've got an Xbox console and a PC, which, to be fair, this thing does its job, but it's a bit of a potato. The Play Anywhere kind of functionality allows me to carry progress across the two platforms. We've not really seen that before. That's quite a big deal for people that are either casual on both systems or perhaps more invested in one but have a PC. Play Anywhere is another positive step. Okay. Following year, 2017, cross-platform play. That's a big promotion for Xbox. Funnily enough, at this time, Jim Ryan, I think, what is he, Vice leader, or he's sitting there somewhere in the backlogs. He's loving life. But we've got Xbox promoting cross-platform with, let's say, Rocket League. That feels like one of the bigger ones to come out of it, that it was going to do cross-platform between PC, Xbox One, and importantly, the Switch. And all the PR, all the good stuff is that... where have I gone? I've got lost. Is this where my debate training has failed me? Excuse me, I'll take a sip of my beer. I'll calm down. Let Mitch savour on that. Cross-platform, Rocket League. Sony at this point are saying, well, we're not really interested. There's a lot of mumbo jumbo about the safety of their users, but
it was a bit more. It was a bit more assertive than that, wasn't it? It was a bit more two fingers up to you.
We've got this closed off product. You don't come in.
It's the best place to play games.
Yeah.
Period.
Yes. It's not great. Game Pass launches June 2017. That's pretty good. Like, I am not the person that will sit there and promote Game Pass as the silver bullet in the industry. But I think, as someone like Keith can attest to, who is enrolled in that service, it does have some pretty good benefits. And for your wallet and for your access to games, that's not a negative. That's another positive step on the Xbox brand. He eventually kills off the Kinect as well in 2017. So that kind of old guard of what Don Matrick come along with is almost dead at that point. It's like, you no longer need to have this fucking thing plugged into your console for it to do basic functionality. So that's killed off. And that's a big step. That's a big walk back on technology that was probably R&D invested and marketed. That's not an easy thing to be getting at. 2018, they launched the Xbox Adaptive Controller. Now, the Adaptive Controller is basically a controller that allows perhaps someone who has physical disabilities or other constraints that don't allow them to play games with a traditional controller like this. It makes it a difficult, proposition. The Adaptive Controller allows people of that ilk to get involved with games. Now, all the other things I've said are obviously great positives, and marketing-wise, that's great. But for me, one of the biggest things that goes completely under the radar is this Adaptive Controller. To have one of the big three players in the hardware industry push and give that a spotlight is invaluable. That's fantastic, because before that, it's relying on charities like Special Effect and other places to adapt existing technology or find third-party partners for Xbox to kind of put a marker in the ground and say, no, we want to support this. We want to drive this forward. We want people to be able to enjoy this medium, the video games, regardless of any constraints or any disabilities you might have. So, if all the things that I'm about to say, that for me is the biggest positive that's come out of the Xbox brand since Phil Spencer has been in charge. And other things like, we've had games appear on other platforms like Cuphead, that's gone on PlayStation. Ori and the Blind Forest has gone on Switch, and I think Will of the Wisp is either on there or going on there. They've doubled their first-party stable since he's been in charge. So that's Mojang. I mean, Minecraft it's eye-watering prices, but you can't tell me that Minecraft is not a sound investment, many, many years ago at 2.5 billion. Bethesda and the other kind of studios they've put in there. And then into sort of more recent times, they've launched the Xbox Series X. Okay, I've still got some problems with that. I don't think it's the best launch in the world, starting with no games and whatnot. But things like xCloud and FPS Boost have been net positives as well. So there's a lot of stuff. Where Jim Ryan has started is here. He's come into the job. They've got momentum, Sony. Where Phil started, way down here. And yeah, Phil hasn't probably brought them to this level. He definitely hasn't. Has he got them closer and closer and closer? I think he has. And I think a lot of the stuff that he has done in his tenure has positive effects, not just for Xbox, but for the gaming community as well. Backwards compatibility, crossplay, that sort of stuff has really shaped the way that some of the developers look at their games. Anyway, I've waffled. I got lost. We're back. Hello.
Right. I'm just going to take a moment to allow you both to digest what's been said. And I'll read you the prepared statement from Erebus Jones. Arguably, the only thing more silly than arguing which console is best, because it's obviously PC in it, is arguing over which overpaid middle-aged white dude should keep his corporate job. So thanks for that. damning praise on us talking about this on this podcast. But if we must, my thoughts are, when you look at the ethos behind this gen, Phil's big idea is building an inclusive service that makes playing new games, Mitch will take umbrage to that statement, more accessible to more people, making it more affordable and giving more players greater choice about where they play, PC, Xbox, streaming, even making obtaining expensive hardware easier through Microsoft All Access. Jim's approach this gen seems to be, let's do what we did last gen, but with buzzier triggers. And make everyone pay an extra £10 or $10 per game for the pleasure. Anyone wanting to fire Big Phil at this point probably has a Mark Cerny tattoo. Ooh-ar.
I might get a Mark Cerny tattoo and a Phil Spencer tattoo just to even it out.
Which one would be bigger though?
It's Big Phil, isn't it? Even if Phil is actually small in stature, it's Big Phil Spencer, aka Big Phil Spender.
Right.
One last thing. Don't forget, during this tenure, Phil was promoted as well to a senior leader within Microsoft. So I don't think Microsoft would have done that if he'd done a bad job, considering what Don Matrick had done previously. He is one of I think there's like 16 or 15 senior leaders listed on their site, and he now has a presence very high up that's promoting the gaming arm of Microsoft, who, quite frankly, don't really need Xbox's money. Obviously, on the PlayStation side, there's a lot more pressure on Jim Ryan because that's a highly profitable venture for them, and it needs to succeed.
They're pretty much Sony's only profitable venture because they don't make money off TVs anymore. No. Before we get into rebuttals, I'll just introduce everyone to my next beer, which is the Romme's Munich Keller beer. Very, very nice can design. Lots of different houses in various different colours. Our classic Keller beer is brewed in Bavaria in accordance with the Bavarian purity law of 1516. If anyone's not familiar with that, it's a very important law in Bavaria, I assume. Unfiltered and brewed with German malts and noble hops is our tribute to the Franconian beer history.
How do you measure noble hops?
Well, that's the name of the hop.
Okay, I thought there was assigning some sort of categorization. These ones are noble.
These are the Lord hops. These are the Queen hops.
We've got some peasant cops there for the old Stella.
Wow, this is an interesting colour. Looks more like Tizer or Irn-Bru than... for any Americans or people around the rest of the world listening, you probably won't understand that reference, but it's actually got kind of an orangey tinge to it.
Looks all right. Does it taste all right? That's the big question.
Well, it tastes a shitload better than that stout I was drinking.
So here's the problem I had with that Beer 52 subscription is when I start drinking beer, I get into a bit of a rhythm with it. I think, I want another one of those. I think normally you get, 2 maximum of the same beer, sometimes none. So changing from beer to beer.
I've never had 2 of the same.
Okay, well, that's where I kind of fell off the wagon, was that I would go from one beer to another and think, that tastes different or better or / worse. So I had to pack it in the end. But
see, I don't mind trying lots of different things, and this is where I'm remaining impartial.
Of course,
but going back to the point of this, I think Game Pass does do a better service to gamers than something like PlayStation Now, because of the such a wide variety of titles that you could have on there, and particularly if you've got Game Pass Ultimate, which means that you've then got access to another set of titles because you've got console Game Pass and PC Game Pass rolled into one. Having that ability to try lots of different games is more advantageous than, say, just having a PlayStation Now subscription and playing old PlayStation games.
And Avengers.
Why would anyone?
I have downloaded it. I haven't subjected myself to it yet.
Right. So we'll start with Mitch. Set out your case for why Phil Spencer should be fired.
Now, I'm going to say, when I say fired, I mean fired from his current position and put somewhere else in Microsoft. I don't think he's done all bad. What I think, as the head of Xbox, I think he's done a horrible job, though. I think as a he's great for PR, and I think he would work great in a PR department, but he's not good as a head of Xbox.
So just for anyone listening, when Mitch made that statement, OTTAPPS pulled a rather sizable shocked face.
It was disgusting. It was disgusted. It wasn't shocked.
So you made some great points, and I'm not going to deny you of some of those great points that you have made. Like, he has made some strides in the gaming community for many reasons, including adaptive controllers. I think backwards compatibility is not an argument, due to the fact that PlayStation, even before that, had made the statement that they could not bring backwards compatibility to the PlayStation 4 because they messed up on the PlayStation 3. If you look at their past track record, you could play PS1 games on your PS2. You could play PS1 and PS2 games on your PS3. It's just because of the architect that they could not get it done on the PS4, and they would have done it where you could play your PS4 catalog on your PS5. I don't doubt that for 1 second, that they would have allowed that, if not for the first generation of the console, like first iteration of that console, they would allow you to do that. So I don't see that as an argument at all whatsoever. It's just something that they had advantage of. I think here's the thing with Phil Spencer and Xbox. He has to do these little things that you're talking about. Complaining about crossplay, complaining about backwards compatibility, because he doesn't have games to back it up. He doesn't have the games. And the franchises he does have, besides Forza, has ran them down to the ground. Gears is now just an acceptable game. That's nice. But, like, it's where it should have, like, Gears where it is now with Gears 5 was Gears when it was back in Gears 3. Basically, with his first parties, especially the games, he has not been able to manage them in a proper way to be able to, one, output, because they don't come out with games very often, and two, be able to come out with quality games. Because he let Bungie go, because he decided that it's okay to like make these studios that are specifically for these types of games, shoehorn these studios and make them make a certain type of game. Whereas Sony has flourished because they allow creatives to be creative. Now, can they like pitch down a pitch like Days Gone 2? Sure, because maybe Days Gone 2's pitch was bad. But they allowed something like Horizon Zero Dawn to flourish, and that has taken a studio that used to just make Killzone games and to make something new. That allowed Insomniac to make a Spider-Man game. That allowed the God of War team to make a reimagining of God of War, because they even canceled a project from Sony Santa Monica that was a sci-fi game that they were making, a sci-fi adventure game that just was not coming together, but they allowed them to flourish in making a new reimagining God of War if they wanted to. They allowed The Last of Us. They allow Uncharted. So Sony has done a great job in flourishing their studios, which is why we buy these products, for the games. We don't buy them for backwards compatibility as our main reason. We don't buy them for accessibility as the main component of our games. Now, great. I mean, Sony also does accessibility in their games as well. If you look at The Last of Us Part 2, it's one of the most accessible in regards to visually for people that visually and hearing for any game in the market. So
still need a standard controller. And importantly, you would probably still need the PS5 controller to give the rumble cues for some of the adaptive things that they're putting. Just throwing it out there.
Oh, sure.
Staying impartial.
Oh, sure. No, and I get you. Like, and I would counteract with Microsoft. They have the controller, but do they have the settings in their games to back it up? I don't think they do. At least in the games I play.
They're not as
accessible. Good. Yeah. So, each of them have work to do, for sure. But here's the biggest thing. Like, the games. And these games provide revenue, and that's the only reason why they've gone to Game Pass, is because they don't have games, and they're basically trying to. And here's the thing: and if you were at a major gaming company in regards to a producer of not just a console, but also games to sell your console. The fact that you cannot come out with not just games, you can't come out with high quality games to meet your partners, which is, remember we're talking Zelda, the greatest game ever made, Breath of the Wild with that when was the last time you saw Microsoft earn a award at the Game Awards? They're never there. Never. And
You mean Jeff Keighley's awards?
Jeff Keighley's awards, sure. And even the DICE Awards.
Yeah, fair point.
Like they are not, and this is why they have Game Pass, which is fine. It's fine to offer all these games at at this low cost, but what they're doing is basically saying our games are so bad and so not worth spending $70 for, which you can spend $70 for an Xbox game if you want to. That is an option. Which also
they're not $70, aren't they $60
on the Xbox Series X?
Yeah.
Yeah, they haven't increased the prices.
I thought it was $70. Well, they haven't come out with they haven't come out with a first party title yet, so I'm assuming they will be $70. So my assumption they will be $70. Here's the other thing: when you don't have their subscription to their service, you don't have those games anymore. So you do not own these games. You're renting these games for a cost of whatever you pay per month, $14 or $7 or whatever you're paying per month.
Is that not true of anything now, though? So if you wanted to play Marvel's Spider-Man and Sony didn't want to support that game anymore, they could just change the code on the back end, and your disc would install a version of the game that was unplayable because you can't download the patches anymore. So it's somewhat of an argument. I wouldn't say it was
the difference, McWomble. That is an online game. If I want to play The Last of Us Part 2, I could still play The Last of Us Part 2. May not have all the patches, but I can still play The Last of Us Part 2 if I have the disc in hand. Or it's downloaded
right.
on
Anyone
my console.
out there who's playing the game offline and hasn't installed a patch, please let us know whether or not you can play through the entirety of the game.
You can. So here's the other thing. I actually have a client that I work with that does not have, they have a PlayStation 4, but they don't have access to online, so they can't even download patches. So I played Marvel's Spider-Man with them, and we were able to complete the game. Does it have some bugs? Absolutely. But it was not buggy enough for us not to be able to play through. So I played his mom also bought him Cyberpunk 2077. So we'll see.
Oh, damn.
Oh, ouch.
So
wake up.
I had to forewarn her, being like, he can't really play that because he doesn't have the patch. Nor does he. One, he has a pro, but he needs patches, but it's still not running good enough even with patches. So anyway, but that's not the point. The point is, they only have that servicer because they don't have it. And the fact that people are giving good faith on him to say, well, he bought all these studios. Literally what he has done with games right now is all he has done is spent daddy's money. He's a rich guy that has spent daddy's money and has not brought on any money in. That's literally what he's done. And final point.
I'm going to cut you off.
No.
Make your final point.
Final point. He spent daddy's money, and with that, everyone is hoping that these games will be good. But what is their track record has said, including Halo Infinite, has to be delayed a full year because it was that bad. And this studio was working on this game under his tenure. He needs to be able to make good games. He's a great PR guy. He's not good at managing all aspects of this team. And either he needs to move aside and allow someone else to handle better with the games. He can be the face. I don't care about that. I want good games.
That's all I want. That's why I'm employed.
So Jim Ryan is a marketing executive, and he allows is it Henrik? Oh God, I've forgotten his name. Who used to be the head of the Killzone studio. Well,
Sony has always had that. It used to be Shuhei Yoshida, but at the same time, Jim Ryan's role, he does play the games. He is at the pitch meetings. They do give input. And that is something that has been very clear from interviews
So
that those guys do take hands on to these games. Like it goes through 3 people to be able to say, yes, that this is good. No, this is not good. Please change.
speaking of change, we are going to now move over to OTTAPPS. Set out your case for firing Jim Ryan.
Poor old Jim. I feel it feels a bit traitorous to be slagging him off like this, but look, if you look at the 2 perspectives you've got, Jim Ryan has been fortunate to come into Sony. Say what we got the head position in February 2019, something like that. Is that around accurate? He's not been there long, a couple of years, we'll say.
He's been in the executive office for a long time.
True, but then you could say Phil Spencer
job.
was there through the 360 era, which had Gears of War franchise and great franchises then. So if you want to talk about games, like Phil has been involved in great games on the Xbox brand. But we're talking about Top Boy. You know, he's riding the wave of momentum that someone else created for him. And whilst that is it's a difficult job, it's a high pressure job, I don't think that's quite the same level of skill sets required to pull a failing and reputationally damaged product and company up by the bootstraps and make them relevant again. Because at some point during that Xbox One period, I thought, you know what, there's a good chance Microsoft pack up here and leave the console space altogether. Not only did he pull them up, he got promoted. So again, we talk about whether he's bringing in money or not. I don't know. He's doing something right because he's got a lovely...
Executives don't always bring up the right people. They bring up people they like, not sometimes people that
well,
do
that's
a good
the
job.
byproduct of Phil. He's
Cronyism? You think cronyism exists?
Phil's a great guy.
Look at the British government at the moment to see if cronyism exists.
Who'd you rather go for a beer
I've worked for many companies where they've brought up people because they like them, and that's what they've told me for verbatim, not because they did a good job.
Anyway, the problem with Jim versus Phil was that Jim doesn't have the body of work at the top job, and that's not really a diss on Jim. He's not been there long enough. We don't really know what Jim Ryan's PlayStation looks like, really, do we? I think that's a fair comment. Mm-hmm. We know what Phil's looks like, and he had to do a hell of a lot of work, like I outlined in my opening argument, to get them back in a place where they could launch again side by side with Sony at a console launch. The jury's still out on both of them. That's the fact of the matter. And the work that Phil has done, yes, it's taken a long time. I totally agree with that point. And you'll never see me championing Xbox as the bringer of games. But I'm really excited about this generation because they're both in a position where they shouldn't fail. And this is the dance now. The dance really starts now. Now we've got those new machines.
6 years later,
Phil's
you've been in the job for 6 years, and now you go to the dance. It's
because you've got a lot of damage to undo. I went through a whole timeline there and spent probably more time than I should talking about all the positives that he's done. But that was necessary to get people to trust the brand.
No interrupting.
Sorry.
You can allow him to speak.
Of course it's necessary. This is why I asked you at the beginning, do you remember the launch of the Xbox One? And it was a shit show. It was an utter shit show. And people don't forget, we know what the community's like. They will hang on to the negatives and not ever portray the positives. There's half a dozen good to great things that he's done, which the one thing he hasn't done is produce the games. I agree with that. Gears 5's not bad. It's got the same open critic score as Ghost of Tsushima, for example. So, and for something that's a tired franchise that no one likes, that's a pretty good score considering how much I liked Ghost of Tsushima last year. So, yes, the games aren't there. Are they coming? They fucking better, Phil. I'll be honest with you. You might be one of my mates, but you better produce these fucking games now, if I'm honest, because you're going to make me look a right fucking prat. Jim's not a bad guy. I'm sure he's not. But what I don't feel his influence on this brand. I feel there's a very clear line of Xbox going this way. Phil comes in charge, steadies it, and the next year they're doing positive PR. They're doing stuff that's going to give them momentum, and now they're back up there. Yes, they're second place, but are they better than they was on the last console generation? 100%. They're far better than they were from when Phil took over to they are now. Jim is riding that wave, which is fine. It's a high pressure job. If he dips it, he'll be gone. So at the end of the day, there's two different jobs going on there. I'm sure they're both going to end up getting the sack eventually, but it's just who goes first.
Phil Harrison.
I just wouldn't be as hard on him.
I'm not holding him.
No. I just wouldn't be as hard on him, like me personally, in regards to Phil Spencer, because if he let these franchises still continue, allowed them to flourish still, because he basically let them die. Like,
Geese is not dead.
You can't, Halo
is in the shit pan, but to be fair,
Halo was a 500-pound gorilla, and he let it go out into the woods and let it break some legs, and now it's a disfigured face.
How many good 4th and 5th games are there in franchises? Like, I think when you get to the 3rd game, which was the peak, I thought of Halo 3 was like finish the fight, all this good stuff. I remember that on 360, and I was geared up for that. At some point, you have to say that's going to be a tired franchise. Should they have even allowed Halo 4 and 5 to be done? Probably not. Like, they weren't great games, as we know. And
I would disagree only because Halo is a multiplayer shooter, which is the most which is the most top-selling type of game out there. Halo was riding the wave of first-person shooters. It was the thing everybody played. Its multiplayer was the thing everybody played, and to let
on
it
consoles.
on consoles, and to let it get schooled by Call of Duty.
I don't think let it got schooled. Call of Duty grabbed that and took that. They've done a tremendous job.
Well, I've got so now we're talking about different franchises from different developers. I think I'll summate what we've discussed so far. Thanks to Erebus Jones for saying that this entire discussion has been completely pointless, which frankly it is, because we have no sway over either company. It was just nice to have a bit of a chat
you always
about
say
it.
I should be in the room.
Yeah, well, the Xbox sad. We could have fixed that for them. So the nomenclature of Xbox has got something to be said about it. That said, as well, Jim Ryan jumped on the $70 game bandwagon. That's a mark against his name for me. Greedy marketing executive pushing up the price of games unnecessarily. Overall, there is nothing you have set out, Mitch, makes me, if I had the power to say that Phil Spencer should be fired from his position, nothing you have said today would convince me that would be the case.
Thank Christ.
I always think the number one thing is games, and if you can't,
we got
the
them.
Games.
Green. No, don't worry about that meeting Monday. It's cancelled. But one was going to send the email later on. I know, worrying. You come to me, you get the job done. Phil's friend of the show at DIMP, so he's we've got a personal connection with him.
It's just
equally. There's nothing that say Jim Ryan should get fired.
No.
Like OTTAPPS was saying, so let's wait and see what happens in the Jim Ryan era for PlayStation.
Who will go first is my question.
Jim Ryan.
Yeah, I think it'll be Jim Ryan as well. Just not because he's doing a bad job. I think it's just because of what Sony is.
There will be the risk for them is. One of the things I would have said if I was on last week when you guys were talking about PlayStation, it seems like an all eggs in one basket type of scenario. And all you need is, say,
some lovely eggs in there.
Yeah, there are some lovely eggs, but if one of them were to go foul,
or it
carrying on the egg reference,
and it ate all the other eggs, that would be a disaster.
Yeah, so it is. Is having your entire platform based on The Last of Us a sound economic strategy?
Wait, hold on.
I don't think it is.
That's not what it is, though.
Oh, I'm summating.
That's not.
Don't interrupt me when being the adjudicator.
I was gonna say that it's not the same because they're the last Naughty Dog's making 3 new franchises. It's like
the crazy thing about this whole thing is that actually, if we. I'm much more aligned with Mitch than probably what he thinks after this, simply because I don't think there's much to panic about on the Sony side. Like this, they've had a few PR blips. There's a lot of greenbloods that don't want they want to jump on any sort of negative of Sony, and they are taking those advantages because unfortunately Sony are allowing them to. But a lot of what we had in the last 10, 14 days has been a huge overreaction. And I've got my PS5 and I'm really happy with that. I'm happy with the direction they're going. And, if Jim Ryan delivers me some more great games, he can become a friend of the show. So the doors are open for everyone here. Well, I'm up for cronyism. I'll be corrupted.
You know what shuts up those people right away? When they get to see that PlayStation showcase and they go, oh shit, I can't match that in games.
This is what I'm excited for what's happening, because I feel like the excuses are out for Phil now in terms of the game front. You've got a new console to support, and you've got all these massive purchases, like $7.5 billion for Bethesda. That's got to pay some dividends.
I'm just shocked they let him spend that much money.
I know,
to be truthfully honest,
money.
Because I'm like, dude, what have you shown that you can? That's like all this is about games for me. Like I could care. I don't care about the other issues because we wouldn't have Game Pass if they didn't come up with the goods in games. But like nothing has proven to me that he can nourish talent. So like, why would they let them go buy more talent and think that they could help them nourish it to make good games? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I feel like the first party stuff from Sony does feel more, excluding Spider-Man, obviously, feels nurtured. Like it's been in house. They've nurtured these studios throughout several years. Whereas what Xbox have done is found a nice, mature, high profile studio / company that outputs good games and gone, okay, we'll buy you and you'll be in our stable. They're not nurtured Bethesda from the ground up. Bethesda have done all that off their own back. So there's definitely a difference there. But at the end of the day, if it produces great games on Xbox, I'm not going to complain.
I won't either. I'll shut my mouth if they shut me up with good games, but I need to see good games. And Halo was just like the last nail in my coffin. Just to be like, how can you mess up a reinvention of Halo? How? This studio is made for Halo.
Well, I said when we very first started doing this online discussion forum, the Xbox is just it needs to move away from the three pillars of Xbox of Gears, Halo, and Forza, because they're so fucking stale.
But is there a problem? Like, Sony could become stale if they carry on with this same God of War, and I love all these games. God of War, like that could happen by the end of this generation.
I will say the difference.
That's why it's interesting.
Like I get your point, and I would just say the difference is Sony. If you look at Sony, you'd be like, tell me their staple franchises. You'll probably name everyone would name a different one. Someone would say God of War. Someone would say Uncharted. Someone would say Horizon Zero Dawn. Someone would say Ratchet and Clank. Someone would say Bloodborne. Like the fact that the diversity of their high quality games is what sets them apart compared to what McWomble saying Halo, Forza, Gears. Forza's great. Like I'm not gonna diss. I'm never gonna diss Forza. They do a great job.
I don't even like Forza.
I'm not a big racing fan, but I can see great quality product, and like I've played it before, and I think it's a great game. But yeah, it's just I have such an issue in my brain of being like, why make these studios like the one where they making Perfect Dark? They're like, we made this studio to make Perfect Dark. It's like that's the wrong mentality to have. It's like bring in talent and let them decide. Here's some franchises, or here pitch us your own IP.
Do you have an original idea for us?
Yeah.
Days Gone 2. Well, that's off the table.
What I would say in summation is the chief exec of a major games platform holder company who should be fired is Bobby Kotick.
Sack him.
He's a greedy, manipulative so-and-so, and you get 100 million a quarter from Call of Duty Warzone alone in the last 2 quarters. And what do you decide to do with that money? You make the new map, which is the old map but new.
I've heard about this.
Well done. That's amazing. 100 million a quarter, people. And he's also got a penchant for giving himself massive bonuses whilst laying people off. So Fuck that guy.
Hi, Bobby. You're sacked.
Can you call
That's who we
Phil?
started
Can you
with.
call Phil to help him break the news?
I'll tell Phil, so I've got this guy who can make some games for you. Since you're struggling on the games front, this Bobby guy, he can monetize the shit out of that.
And that seems to be the only thing that Activision are pushing at the moment is.
That would get McWomble off Game Pass real quick.
Oh yeah, it would. And Jesus, I'd be clamoring for a Sony console. Yeah, so really this whole discussion has been slightly redacted because there is no way that I was going to agree that either of these guys are going to get fired.
It's all everyone. It's all for good fun.
Exactly.
It's an interesting debate to actually have. Unfortunately, too bad Jim Ryan came in. It would be more interesting because who was before him? It wasn't Jack Tretton. It was who was before him?
That fellow, yeah, blonde-haired.
Sean Layton.
Sean Layden. It would be way more interesting because Sean Layden and Phil Spencer came in about the same time. So that would have been a more interesting conversation if Sean Layden was still there. But yeah, it's all for good fun. It's just a fascinating thing.
I think they clearly had to do two different jobs. Phil had to do a massive repair job, and Jim, it's like, don't fuck this up before you retire.
Yeah,
and you're golden. And like, I know which job I'd rather have. It'd be Jim's job because I feel like I could get away and kind of imposter that one. I wouldn't fancy dragging Microsoft out of the bins, which is where they were back in the day.
And if people go ahead,
be able to demonstrate to Microsoft corporate, who most of the people in Microsoft corporate probably don't care, is that they're interested in how do we flog 0365. How do we get people onto Microsoft Teams, which if you install that on your phone and try and use it, kills the battery.
It's horrible.
But that's where Microsoft make the biggest chunk of all their money. Xbox is a toy for them. It's kind of like billionaire owners of football clubs wanting to put the European Super League together. It's something that needs to make money for them, but it's not the be all and end all. Whereas for Sony, it is far more important that PlayStation is as popular and as profitable as it possibly can be.
And just so people know, like, what sparked this conversation? Besides, so we had the Sony news, and then we just had the news a couple days ago or so where Jim Ryan just did some clarifications on some stuff on a Japanese news article about the movie pass thing, and like it's a test in Poland, and it's only going to be in Poland for now.
Why Poland? CD Projekt Red are ruining their own studio there.
I think they said because there's more social activity there, and they use more of the online services there, so it's a better test field for them. Some guy, I only know this because I forgot his name off the top of my head. I retweeted him a couple times. A guy messaged me from Poland because he saw my tweet about Movie Pass and said, "Hey, let me give you some info of how it's going," and showed me some pictures and things like that. So, but anyway. He then clarified some other things about like, we're, I can't remember the stuff off the top of my head now. But anyway, it was something of like, OTTAPPS then messaged going, would you believe this guy? Like anything this guy would say. And so I was like, what?
You have to say there was a cackling gif of Jim Ryan. He looks very sinister. There's a certain floppy-haired prime minister who he reminded me of as he was cackling, and I thought, would you trust this man? It was tongue in cheek.
It was tongue in cheek, but what fed into it for me was that like this is not the first time people have been insinuating like Jim Ryan is like running PlayStation into the ground, and I'm like,
leave Jim alone. He's old.
I was like, seriously? You're gonna run Jim into the ground, but you're gonna prop up Phil Spencer of all people? Like comparing the two people? Like it's like, have you seen what Phil Spencer has done yet?
Phil's a hero.
And like, I don't. And again, he's a great PR guy. I bet he's the nicest guy in the world.
He is.
And he's got a great selection of game developer T-shirts.
Oh yes. I was he the Sean Layden, or when Sean Layden did he start doing that when Sean Layden did the whole T-shirt thing at PSX, or is that before that? Because I know Sean Layden started to wear T-shirts of like franchises, and then all of a sudden they're like,
Yeah.
One more
Has,
thing.
has Jim Ryan ever hidden a brand new PlayStation console in the back of his office when he was doing web interviews? No, he hasn't. Therefore, Phil Spencer is the better individual.
Well,
and
he doesn't do web interviews.
No, he doesn't.
Because he
That's where he's
doesn't
falling
need
down.
to. Because
he just does investicals.
It probably was in the background, but it looked like a great big fucking fan or something.
It was.
I can't identify that thing.
I bet it was.
It looked like his router.
I bet you $100 it was in the PlayStation showcase, but then they're like, oh, let's just green screen it. So
what's that over your shoulder, Mitch? That's the PS5. I thought you didn't have one. Oh no, it's a great big fan.
It's black too. That doesn't.
It's black. Yeah, I thought you might have had it spray painted. I was thinking of doing mine.
You can buy the plates. Right.
Can buy the plates.
I think we've exhausted this discussion, don't you?
Yeah, all for good fun.
Fancy wheeling me out on this pointless discussion of all the times to wheel me out.
Well, you do a podcast called Idle Game Chat.
We do have a lot of idle chat on there,
which I've never been invited to, by the way.
No, nor has anyone else. It's not just you, Mitch. I don't want to get you up at 4:45 in the morning to do that because your timekeeping is a little bit.
Don't you dare do that.
Today only.
Today
There's a few
only.
other things we're doing, and then we're going to open the floodgates. Q3 2021. Come one, come all. Especially now it's video, and you guys are all set up. So arguably better than me talking to Adkins because his camera keeps shitting out.
Yeah. Well, you guys are the second best podcast in the UK.
Well, we're number one in Essex, and that's all that matters to us. Okay.
Yeah, I heard there was going to be a rival in Southend, so you best get down the road, sort them out.
I don't like the idea of that.
Big up the Colchester Massive.
Don't, Keith. They're going to get literally in 90 minutes. They could be relegated. It's not right. And Stan Collymore come out and said, "Oh, I want to buy the club, sort it out because the manager's the owner's a piece of shit. Ron Martin, get him out." 48 hours later, he's like, "I'm not doing it." Thanks, Stan. Thanks for getting our hope up. The club's doomed.
And on that note,
goodbye. I love Southend.
You know, this music's a little somber. This is for when this just happens.
And they're not going to get relegated.
You know, when you were really mad right there, it was a perfect moment when you threw the cap because it made a perfect, like, double dink.
Oh, did it?
It did.